Hello everyone, this is Tactical H here, and today we are having our very first battle of Total War Warhammer 3 after the 1.1 patch dropped, with our opponent here bringing a pretty meta army with all these iron blasters as well as Gorgers in the reserves. You can see that the meta build of my opponent can be heavily affected by all those major nerfs that Ogre Kingdoms received after the patch. For the rest of the build, we have some Light Belchers here, some Ogre Bulls in the starting army, as well as a bunch of Nobbler Trappers and Nobblers, led by a Slaughter Master with the lore of the Great Maul. While in the reserves, other than the Light Belchers, we have the One-Fang Cavalry with great weapons for the anti-large armor piercing, as well as the Ogre Bulls with dual weapons to kill off my Khorne infantry, while the mobility-wise, we have a single Saber Tusk pack, and that's basically it for the Ogre Kingdoms. As for the Khorne army played by yours truly, we have a front line of Chaos Warriors with Khorne, of Halberds, and then we have some Fleshhounds of Khorne, a very typical Fleshhound spam that I love to use, and also a bunch of Chaos Furies in disguise. Due to the increase in funds for the starting army, we are able to now deploy heavy infantry in the starting army as well. Other than that, we have the Cultists of Khorne bringing the Gate of Khorne summons on a horse. Also, Herald of Khorne on a Juggernaut bringing the Locust of Wrath. In reserve, we have 4 Spawn of Khornes, a couple Chaos Warriors of Khornes with Halberds as well, another Fleshhounds, and some Furies, as well as Chaos Warhounds, and that's basically it for all the army builds. Let's move on to the battlefield and see how the Ogre Kingdoms get affected by the nerfs in action. With my opponent bringing double Iron Blaster, it makes perfect sense for them to just sit back with the cannons and rain down shots onto my poor heavy infantry. You can see that once the shot connects, it still does heavy damage to the Cornet Halberd, so I'll be pulling back my infantry to shelter of the terrain, hoping to protect them from more incoming fire, while my mobility will be pushing forward, hoping to scout out any hidden forces just like these Nobbler Trappers who have stock, and also the Gorgers. So now let's fast forward a bit as my army and my opponents are just positioning, as my Cornet Fleshhounds over here are trying to sneak into the backlines, but unfortunately with the Ogre Bulls with dual weapons charging out, my Fleshhounds will be retreating, although my opponent here, with all these Ogre Bulls separating from the main formation, I am able to get a surround with all these Fleshhounds. Of course, these Fleshhounds got charged due to my slacking micro, but still, a second unit of Fleshhounds charging in, and my heroic squad rear charging all these Ogre Bulls, they are able to do some massive impact damage. As the reinforcing units, the Gorgers and the Nobbler Trappers are now pinned down by my Furies who have intercepted them. Even the Saber Tusk pack taking massive damage from the frenzied Chaos Furies. So now with the Gorgers rushing into combat, my units are taking quite some damage, but they are no way as devastating as before, as they are now being dropped down to only 12 unit models per whole unit. Combined with the weapon strength nerf, giving Gorgers much less holding power and damage output. My Fleshhounds and the heroic squad are actually able to trade quite efficiently against these Gorgers, despite all the support the Ogre Bulls and Nobblers who are rushing into combat. And with the Gorgers being beaten back by all my Fleshhounds and heroic squads, especially with more Cornet Halberds and Fleshhounds coming in for support, my opponent's front line are in big trouble. While on the left, the Iron Blaster seems to be all out on its own, positioned itself in a rather awkward spot due to them not having the line of sight at its original position at the back, unable to shoot down my Cornet Halberds, and that exposed it itself, allowing my Fleshhounds to surround and isolate the Iron Blasters. The Ogre player tries to salvage this situation by throwing in some Gorgers, but unfortunately they are no longer the anti-everything unit they used to be. Their damage output really isn't enough to break off both units of Fleshhounds. They probably was able to do so in the previous patch, but in this patch, they are now the one being shot down by all my Fleshhounds, especially with a third unit of Fleshhounds rushing in, devouring all the Saber Tusk pack and Gorgers. And on the other side, in the middle of the battlefield, my Chaos Warriors Cornet Halberds have rushed into combat against the Nobblers, eating a massive fist in the process as well from the Great Maul magic of the Slaughter Master. The casualties might be quite heavy. Still, These cornered halberds will be holding in combat with their heavy armor and superior melee stats. No more frenzy, but still. 100 armor, 30 attack, 34 defense, still much better than the puny nobblers who will fall over under the lightest wind. And back to the main brawl over here. I have successfully pushed through all their front line. My opponent tried to recharge with all these flanking ogre bulls, but a summon of bloodletters pinned them down, blocking them in this choke point, allowing my mobility and my cornered halberds, my heroic squads, to just push through straight into the back lines, shutting down some of their lead belchers, routing the iron blasters as well. And over here with the saber tusk pack, the gorgers and whatnot being routed and destroyed, the flesh hounds are able to just push in and keep hunting down the iron blasters, while the nobblers who does not have the highest leadership are routed and chased off by the furies. Some dual weapon ogre bulls are rushing in trying to pin down my chaos furies, and their anti-infantry bonus are great at dealing with the small size flying unit, so my character squads have to go back in again to support the furies to fight off these dual wielding ogre bulls, so as to keep up the pressure on my opponent's backline, squeezing them into the deployment zone. And my opponent is forced to just constantly summon their own intercepting forces like the Gorgers, and also more infantry, ogres, and nobblers alike to deal with all these incursion of cornered units. However, the bloodletter summon over here has faded out of existence, and now allowing the ogre bulls and the nobbler units to flank around, posing a great threat to my chaos warriors of cornered halberds. And at the back, lead belchers still firing, but not for long due to my cornered flesh hounds rushing in, silencing their firepower and pushing off one of the iron blasters. And in the front line, the nobblers are being routed by a rear charge from the chaos warhounds, and more warhounds are coming in to secure this objective 2. And I basically have the two objectives 1 and 2, as my opponent sneakily captured objective 3 with a stealthy unit of nobbler trappers. So, with an overview of the battlefield, I have a slight advantage in objective control, especially I have denied yet again my opponent's attempt to capture objective 1. Cornered halberds able to intercept these nobblers, and in turn these ogre bulls with dual weapons as well, preventing them from occupying this objective. And at the back, my heroic squads were a bit isolated due to all the infantry support and flesh hounds being broken off by my opponent, but still, a single unit of bloodletter summon and a locus of wrath buffing the attack of all these units allow them to do massive damage at the gorgers and the ogre bulls. Gorgers no longer the overtuned powerhouse they used to be, no longer to win this fight as easily as they could before. And right now, I am having the upper hand in this particular engagement. Still, my opponent was able to free up one of the Iron Blaster, continuously raining down shots at my now still rather fresh Khorne halberds. These Chaos Warriors have not seen any action before, and they are now taking free damage from the cannons of the Ogres, but it seems that they are not taking as much damage as before. Yes, there are still some shots raining in, but the accuracy, the spread, is much larger than before, lowering the concentration of damage. And now these Chaos Warriors of Khorne are able to just hold the line and keep wasting shots of my opponent's artillery. While in the front, these tattered cornered halberds are now routing the nobbler trappers with the help of some more warhounds and furies. In response, my opponent pulled in some dual weapon ogre bulls as a reinforcement. With low anti-infantry bonus, they should be able to deal with all those furies and warhounds who are infantry sized. Back to the fight over here, Gorgers are still fighting, but a flashhound of Khorne being summoned into the battlefield, rushing in for support, has successfully bailed these Herald of Khorne and the two cultists away from the interception of the Gorgers, while the battered Chaos Warriors, as well as more damaged Fleshhounds, are rushing forward and now threatening the backline once again. At the back, my opponent successfully secured the Iron Blaster from the Fury's attacks, soon to resume firing into the middle objective, terrorizing my troops. And the Mournfang Cavalry as well being summoned to counteract my Fleshhounds, still with my numbers advantage in the Fleshhounds and mobility forces, as well as the support of all the character squad. I probably can still counteract these Mournfang Cavalry, as they are not exactly the best cavalry in the Ogre roster. And with the Warriors of Halberds rushing in as well, supporting this fight, These Mornfang cavalry are taking some significant damage from all the flash hounds, high weapon strength, and the armor piercing anti-large damage, while my heroic units are circling around and catching the Iron Blaster once again. But with my opponent summoning in some Gorgers to surround my heroic squad, they will have quite a hard time extracting themselves from combat, so my flash hounds and cornet halberds will be forced to rush in just to bail out all these characters who are now trapped by the rear charging Mornfang cavalry. And thanks to the rear charging of the flash hounds, the halberds, and my valiant fighting of the characters, the Mornfang cavalry actually breaks due to the lack of leadership. The Gorgers are still holding, but they do not have enough numbers to continuously pin down my hero squads, and the flash hounds getting a surround on the Gorgers will be doing massive damage to the lightly armored, frenzied, monstrous infantry, taking down yet another expensive unit. Now let's move to the middle objective at the front line. More Gorgers have been deployed to capture this objective, and they are actually slowly struggling wrestling this objective from my control, but the reinforcements, despite no more cornet halberds in sight, but this is exactly where the spawn of Khorne proved their worth, being an unbreakable anvil to the flash hound reinforcements hammer. They might not be able to beat the Gorgers, who have the support of the Slaughtermaster and artillery fire, but they bought enough time for the flash hounds to arrive and devour the ogre troops. And Objective 3 is now fallen into my hands due to my Chaos Warhounds sneakily backdooring this objective and capturing it. And now I have 3 objectives, significant lead in victory tickets, and successfully pinning down all these units, my opponent's Gorger reinforcements in the back, denying them from supporting the fight in the middle. Sure, they can actually push up some Gorgers to help out the fight in the middle, but the problem is that will leave the Iron Blaster exposed, and the battered Mornfang cavalry will not be able to fend off all my heroic units. And if I have more Flash Hounds and Warhounds summoned into the battlefield, and like Furies airdropping into the Iron Blaster, the firepower will once again be silenced, and no more fire support for the Ogre Kingdoms. Hence, they had to leave at least one Gorger unit guarding the Iron Blaster. As a result, the Slaughtermaster is now fighting alone, surrounded by a bunch of Spawn of Chaos, as well as the Chaos Furies and possibly some Hounds right now, as they're moving into position for a side charge. With the Ogre army failing to make any headway in 2 objectives, my opponent here actually sneakily trying to go for another backcap yet again due to the Saber-Tusk pack and Ogre Bulls rushing to Objective 3, and I'll be responding with some of my mobility units, the Chaos Furies, and my remaining Flash Hounds who are still free. On top of that, my opponent's Slaughtermaster, the leadership, being isolated in Objective 2 with no infantry support to wrestle the objective away from my hands. The Ogre's mobility are too tattered to support any fight, especially the Mornfang cavalry, who have taken massive losses in previous fights. But unfortunately, with them having such a low health level, even the Chaos Furies were able to rout them off from the battlefield. And Gorgers over here successfully pushing off some of my Furies, but now they are sorely needed in other positions such as the middle fight, who have now successfully breaking off the Slaughtermaster of my opponent. On Objective 3, the Ogre Kingdoms are trying for a one last desperate gambit to push off my forces and capture the objective, but the Cornet army ability making them unbreakable and undying, successfully denying their attempt with the help of some Furies rear charging the Ogre units. The Ogre units were unable to break off the Flash Hounds as well as the rear charge from the Chaos Furies. With that, my opponent decided to throw in the towel, and the Blood God's appetite shall be sated by the overflowing blood from the bodies of these fat and meaty ogres. Now let's have a look at the army performances for the Ogre Kingdoms. You can see that the Gorgers, only one of them actually got a lot of value, the others basically got wrecked in battle, and that is all due to the massive nerf they received with the unit model count reduction as well as the weapon damage reduction. And I think that they are now in a much better position in terms of balance-wise than the OP unit they were before. For example, when they were trading up against a large model unit like the Flash Hounds, they were no longer able to trade as cost efficiently as before, making them more in tune to their original role, which is to counteract lightly armored and medium armored infantry, instead of an all-purpose anti-everything killer that it was in previous patch. As for the Iron Blaster, was not able to really accurately measure out their performances here because I was basically letting these Iron Blaster shoot up my infantry sitting in the middle, and sometimes when I blob up my forces like the Khorne halberds, the spawn of Khorne, as well as some of the hounds in the middle surrounding the Slaughtermaster, they got shot up pretty hard, allowing one of the Iron Blaster to earn some massive value. The other one not so much due to some mismicro, and not actually getting a lot of damage done throughout the combat. As for the rest of the Ogre army, the Slaughtermaster was not exactly a greatest combatant to counteract all my Khorne forces, but the fists it dropped onto the Chaos Warriors of Khorne did do a lot of damage, earning around 1k value. As for the rest of the Ogre units, the Ogre Bulls and the Nobblers didn't really do too much, neither did the most of the Ogre Bulls with dual weapons, one of them getting a lot of damage due to that dual wielding nature, able to clear up a lot of my lightly armored infantry sized units like the Chaos Furies and also the Chaos Warhounds. As for the Saber Tusk pack, somehow they earn a lot of value fighting off a bunch of my mobility like the Furies, and that's basically it. The Mournfang Cavalry, not so much. They are not exactly the greatest anti-large cavalry in the Ogre roster, and once they got charged by something like, say, Fleshhounds and Khorne halberds, they just get ripped apart. It's probably still better to just bring more Gorgers to counteract enemy mobility, despite them not being as strong as before. As for the Khorne army, we have the hero squads doing quite a bit of damage overall due to them being really decent fighters, and the Khorne halberds, of course, doing some decent damage, earning 2 chevrons in combat, the other one not so much, but they were able to hold the line and capture the objectives with their martial prowess, while the Fleshhounds, as always, a really solid unit, earning at least almost 2k value on all of these units. Just a really solid mobility still, especially now that they can actually trade decently against the Gorgers. As in the previous patch when I attempted to bring Fleshhounds to counteract Gorgers, they just got wrecked, even if they are a large model unit against the anti-infantry of the Gorgers. As for the rest of the army, the spawns of Khorne were the unbreakable anvil pinning down all my opponent's units, buying time for the reinforcements, the mobility to arrive, while the Khorne halberds are still pretty solid in holding the line, and the Furies, they themselves doing quite a bit of damage overall, running down routed units and also rear charging the lightly armored Ogre units with their frenzied attacks. Chaos Warhounds not the best melee combatant, but still running down routing units and also chasing rear charging Nobblers got them some okay value overall. And yeah, that's basically it for today's battle. Overall, I feel like the Ogre's Gorgers received a great nerf, which is absolutely a good news, putting them in exactly where they belong, alongside with a lot of other balance changes like the nerfs to Iron Blasters and some other nerfs to other factions. I would say that CA did some great job in rebalancing a lot of these unit dynamics and tweaking between different unit stats and whatnot. Of course, there are a lot more adjustments that we can talk about, but they will be in another video for another time. For now, that's gonna be all, and if you enjoyed the battle, be sure to hit the like and subscribe to get notified for future uploads on the channel. And if you have any battles you want to share, feel free to drop by my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. I'll be sure to check them out. And yeah, that's basically it for today's battle. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.